Let's talk about the US government's new definitions of male and female. Because the Trump administration's ceaseless and very convoluted attempts to categorize biological gender into two neat little buckets are getting frankly absurd at this point. A new document put out this week by the now led by RFK Jr. Department of Health and Human Services tries, and really tries, to explain why, in their words, there are only two sexes. And the new thing that they're going with is a claim that biological sex is defined solely by a person's, quote, biological function to produce eggs or sperm. And you probably have some questions about that, like, hey, not all cis men make sperm. What about trans people? Don't intersex people exist? And this document certainly knows that we have those questions, because it's almost funny how much word salad and gobbledygook it goes through to try and get around them and the actual science of everything. There are lines claiming that trans people don't count because HRT or gender-affirming surgery does not, quote, change the type of gamete that the person's reproductive system has the biological function to produce. And they hand-wave away the existence of intersex people by claiming they aren't valid because they don't make a magical third type of gamete, despite upwards of 2% of the population being born with intersex traits. But under all these gamete-focused definitions, we're inevitably going to end up with a lot of folks slipping through the cracks. For example, this new definition functionally reclassifies cis women with complete androgen insensitivity syndrome as men because they're born with internal testes, despite them also having a vagina, estrogen-dominant secondary sex characteristics, and usually being assigned female at birth. This document struggles to define two biological sexes because biological sex is hard to define, no matter what metric you're using. That's been the case for decades when various organizations have tried to put biological sex into two neat and tidy boxes. Want to use chromosomes instead of gametes? Well, chromosomal differences are a thing. People can be born missing one sex chromosome, or they can be born with an extra one. What about hormones? People's production of various sex hormones can vary a lot. There are cis women with elevated levels of testosterone. There's also cis men with limited testosterone production. And both cis and trans people take hormones to alter or impact their secondary sex characteristics. The Trump government's definitions of biological male or female are wordy and unclear and awkward because they're trying to force a made-up idea of a clear gender binary onto an actual reality that is far from that. And while it is almost funny how many hoops the US government has to jump through to try and prove this point of theirs, it's also scary, because these definitions will have tangible impacts on everything from public health research to patient care. The document itself cites women's sports participation as one of the reasons they claim to need these definitions, but with a definition of gender focused on the ability to produce either eggs or sperm, what does that mean for women's and girls' sports? Are athletes going to have to undergo locker room ultrasounds and fertility tests before they can compete? Obviously this will impact trans people, but this sort of policing of sex and gender will impact everyone.